When I was 24, I had the great good pleasure to spend a summer in Paris. Rather than being a tourist, I was staying with my then mother-in-law, a retired French professor at Smith College. I had 3 years of French under my belt, was reasonably fluent, and it was decided that I would take a French grammar course for foreigners at the Sorbonne. So after getting ready for the day, I went to a cafe and had a latte and a croissant, and took the subway to school. Afterwards, I explored the city. Now, almost every tourist visits the Louvre Art Museum, which covers acres of land. It can be overwhelming and take months to see everything, and the marble floors are really hard on your feet. But my favorite museum was the Museum of the Middle Ages. And it's small enough that you can cover the whole thing in about 2 hours. So there you could see old weapons, chainmail, goblets, tools, cutlery, some clothes and furniture. But the crown jewel of this museum was the red silk and wool, late 15th century tapestries of the Lady and the Unicorn, 6 in all. 5 of them represented the 5 senses. The 6th was named To My One Desire. Now the tapestries are roughly about 12 by 10 feet, and they're situated in a dimly lit room, each highlighted with a spotlight. It feels like a sacred space, and they are so awe-inspiring that there's no chattering among the people that are there. People whisper in hushed tones, some meditating while sitting on the benches facing the scenes. So the style of the red tapestries is this great busyness of flowers and creatures and leaves and butterflies and birds. And in the center is this beautiful lady in a gorgeous gown. A lion on her right side signifies the nobility. And to her left is the pristine white unicorn, symbol of purity, innocence, healing, happiness, and vibrant life. He exudes power and wildness and a love of freedom. In the tapestry describing hearing, the lady plays a portable organ standing while a maidservant operates the bellows. In the embroidery symbolizing smell, she is making a wreath of flowers, and a little monkey at the bottom has stolen a flower which he holds up to his nose. The symbolism of touch is not terribly subtle, for the lady is holding the unicorn's horn. Sight is depicted by her seated, holding up a mirror in which the unicorn gazes at his reflection. In the final tapestry, the noble lady takes sweets from a dish held out by a maidservant, and that pesky monkey makes another appearance, gobbling up a little delicacy at her feet. So these sensual, enchanting artworks are the perfect symbol for Paris. It is an eye-rolling cliche to say that this is a magical city. There are people who believe that one of the reasons we may incarnate is to experience the pleasure of the 5 senses. Mine were filled with the textures and tastes and sounds and sights and fragrances of Paris. Street musicians and vendors fill the boulevards during the day. No 2 streets look the same. and there isn't a McDonald's on every other street. French women all have a very distinctive way of dressing, and they prefer 3 or 4 well-designed, well-cut outfits to a closet full of lesser pieces. At night, I rowed the little boats that skim back and forth on the River Seine, and the splendid bridges and buildings on the shore were lit up, displaying elegant architecture. Oh my, French food. Yes, there were many delectable meals while debating with friends, but my favorite guilty pleasure was pain au chocolat, French bread with a thin layer of unsalted butter and a slab of very fine chocolate. And of course, hot croissants with a piece of melted chocolate tucked inside. So if you ever find yourself in Paris, go visit the Lady and the Unicorn.
Our reading today is also from Thich Nhat Hanh, who writes, "There is no need to put anything in front of us and run after it. We already have everything we are looking for, everything we want to become. Be yourself. Life is precious as it is. All the elements for your happiness are already here. There is no need to run, strive, search, or struggle. Just be. Just being in the moment in this place is the deepest practice of meditation. Most people cannot believe that just walking as though you have nowhere to go is enough. They think that striving and competing are normal and necessary. Try practicing aimlessness for just 5 minutes, and you will see how happy you are in those 5 minutes. It is now our doxology. It is number 391, voice still and small. And while we sing the doxology, our ushers are going to hand out chocolate. If you would prefer an apple, come on up and get an apple. If you can't comfortably come down and get an apple, they will bring you one too. Okay. It is time for the chocolate. But it is time to savor the chocolate. And so just like I asked the kids, what do you see when you look at it? It's a swirly pattern on the foil. It's almost square, but not quite. If you are home, take your bite of whatever you have that is delicious and do the same kind of thing with it. What do you hear? Mine says, when life isn't going right, go left. Ooh, smell that. Silas was right, they totally smell like chocolate chips. At its most simple, savoring is the act of being here now, being deeply present to that which is right in front of you, whether it is a forest or a person or a piece of chocolate. We can savor that which is present. For me, savoring often requires silence. I went snowshoeing on the golf course with a friend on Friday, and it was joyful and fun. I got to use my body in a new way. I've maybe been snowshoeing once. And it was a beautiful, crisp, sunny day. And children and families were sledding down the hill. It was quintessential snow day marvelous. But it wasn't until I suggested that we be quiet for a few minutes that I really started hearing the doo 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 of the red-winged blackbird. I savored the wind and the sun and the shadowed ridges that the wind made on the snow, just like it does on the beach. I felt more acutely the sun on my back, and I watched the Canada geese fly onto the pond. Don't get me wrong, a walk in the forest with music or a podcast playing is still a walk in the forest. It can still be pretty great. But in order for me to truly savor something, I need to be fully present to it, and it is much harder to do that with the distraction of music or words. Same that I can't with my phone in my hand, unless I'm actually taking pictures, which sometimes works. But our lives today contain so many options. We have countless things to read or watch or snack on or be engaged with. We are really bad for being bored, even for a moment. I know people who watch television while playing games on their phone at the same time. And yet, as Anna Quindlen says, being bored is where imagination has the chance to run wild. Downtime, she writes, is where we become ourselves, looking into the middle distance, kicking at the curb, lying on the grass or sitting on the stoop and staring at the tedious blue of the summer sky. I don't believe, she writes, you can write poetry or compose music or become an actor without downtime and plenty of it, a hiatus that passes for boredom, but is really the quiet moving of the wheels inside that fuel creativity. Beginning on Tuesday, I will be headed off for a month of sabbatical. Now, if I were taking several months of sabbatical, I might well focus on some kind of project, learning more about creative worship practices, or writing, or art. But because it's just a month, I will tell you that what I most plan to do is just savor some time. Time where I am not trying to think about 16 things at once. Time where I put my phone down consciously for long periods of time. Time where I am walking on the beach or looking through the boxes in my basement or reading novels, and I am just present to that one thing that I am doing. It sounds kind of glorious, to be honest. And I am grateful to the congregation for providing me with that kind of respite so I can come back here and have new ideas to share with you and a renewed sense of energy about this job, which I so love. It is way too easy in our modern world to fall into unhealthy patterns. Our phones are great tools. They keep us in touch with folks, can answer almost any question in just a second, and get us where we need to go and tell us what the weather will be like when we get there. But for many of us, they can also be a huge time suck, and games or social media give us this constant stream of dopamine that may numb us to more subtle pleasures. My daughter Marcella is starting to realize that her phone is not always an unmitigated good, even though she used to rely on it a lot. She said, and I quote with her permission, that she took TikTok, think Facebook for Gen Z, off of her phone, and others, trust me, yes, off of her phone because I would get bored, and then I'd get on TikTok because that's just what I did, and then I'd get bored of TikTok, so I'd close it again, and then without even realizing it, I'd reopen it again because that's what I do. I want to do more reading and more knitting. And she's not the only one. I am totally guilty, and I did this while I was on a silent retreat. I pulled out my phone when I went into the bathroom. These are not good habits. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a lot about mindfulness meditation. Doing the dishes was one of his key examples. He said to focus on the doing of the activity rather than just getting through it with your mind wandering. He wouldn't suggest playing music and just getting through the dishes. Rather, he would suggest that you really focus on the feeling of the warm water on your hands, what the rag or sponge and the soap feel like, the sensuality of wiping a sponge across the dish and seeing what it feels like, the act of rinsing and drying. Being truly present to the ordinary is a really great form of meditation. It can calm us, ground us, and help us stay in our bodies. It can help us live in the moment and not get stuck in a spiral of worrying about the future or obsessing over the past. Folks who have panic attacks or anxiety are sometimes told to follow the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rule. Tell me 5 things you see. Tell me 4 things you hear. 3 things you can touch. Identify 2 different smells. Name 1 thing you can taste. This is another way of being mindful, focusing on what is actually in front of you. Being mindful is one of the best ways to pull yourself out of a spiral. We are struggling as a culture with feeling rushed and overwhelmed and not having enough downtime. How much of this is actually a matter of not paying attention to what we're doing? But mindfulness is a matter of sinking into what is here now and being present to the everyday and the ordinary. But savor has some connotations of specialness as well. And truly, one can use the same techniques to savor extraordinary experiences as well. I have spoken before of my experience coming around the corner in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City in 1993 and coming face to face with Starry Night, the Van Gogh painting that we have seen on everything from postcards to socks at this point. Now it is guarded all through the day with a velvet rope preventing anyone from getting too close. But I have to tell you, in 1993, it was just another painting, albeit an extraordinary one. And I turned a corner and there it was. If you haven't seen it in person, it is so much more textured than you could even imagine. The paint is like 1/4 of an inch thick in the swirly parts. And I just stood there and stared at it, looking over each area of the painting for like 20 minutes. I savored that painting. And I have never forgotten that experience. And unlike mindfulness meditation, savoring can be done well with others. Last night, I got to go see Bruce Springsteen in concert. It was phenomenal to see his energy and his joy in his band and his control of his band and his consummate showmanship. And it was an experience best enjoyed in a giant crowd of people, and then to chat with strangers afterwards on the max about the show and share memories and experiences. We can and absolutely should savor physical touch. Really kiss your sweetheart. Run your hand across your own arm and feel the softness of your own skin. Sink into a hot bath or into a bed with clean sheets. What a delight. How many of you have ever had the stomach flu? Do you remember that feeling when you're just kind of starting back to eat normal food, but your stomach's still a little fragile, and you don't want to eat too much, and you kind of eat more slowly than usual? I know I have had that experience, and I wish that I would eat that way all the time. It's not going to happen, but sometimes I wish that it would be so. Gently and slowly and mindfully. It will not happen for me all the time. I remember when Mika, my daughter, was first born, and Jill and I would tag team because I could eat dinner in 5 minutes, and I really like hot food hot, and so I would eat dinner in 5 minutes, and then she would get to take her time. But I got the hot food, so it was better. But maybe once a day, or once a month, or once a week, take the time to really savor a meal. Eat a baguette and cheese, or roasted vegetables with olive oil and kosher salt, and just savor the deliciousness of that. Notice the flavors and the aromas, the texture of crisp or creamy or roasted edges on a soft base. What do you see, hear, smell, or finally taste in this meal in front of you? Play games with your friends. Laugh with your bestie. Go look at something beautiful. And because it's me, I'm also going to suggest that you go do some of that outside. Reverend Anna Bladel, writing for Infleshed, writes, poet Ada Limon has written an entire small, beautiful book called Shelter that is a love letter to particular trees. To talk about trees, she writes, is also to talk about each other, the ways we are attached to what is living, and how much we want it to go on doing just that for as long as possible. It is never only trees, but what binds us together. The trees, the roots, the eternal part of us that is both the seed and the tree. The first form of meditation Limon learned was what she simply called looking at trees. The meditation practice simply, look, I'm looking at trees. A 2012 article in Scientific American reported that 3 to 5 minutes spent looking at trees can begin to reduce anger and anxiety and pain. I believe anyone who spends time studying trees, and by this I mean simply looking at trees and being with trees, knows this with no need for a study. A website called Tree FM will give you the sounds of a forest around the world. Do we have that? We are going to listen to a forest from California for a minute, sink into it. Savor trees. Savor the one tree outside your house. Learn it and know it and learn who lives there. Notice the cycles it goes through in the seasons. Put your phone down and go live, my friends. Savor moments, ordinary and extraordinary. Practice noticing the beauty in everything and everyone around you. Savor food and art and friends and your own beautiful body and all the amazing gifts that we have been given. Blessed be, and amen.